Hello everyone, hope you're keeping well. This is the second video in a series of videos I'm making on the Greeks, and today we're going to be talking about Hesiod's works and days, specifically the myth of the five ages, which chronicles how humanity descends from a time period of abundance and no violence, no war, no famine, to one of just moral degradation and debauchery and degeneracy. I hope you enjoyed this video. So I will be reading some passages in the poem, and I highly encourage anyone who's interested to go ahead and read the full thing for themselves. There's also another poem called Theogony, which chronicles the genealogy of the gods, how the gods came about into being, and also has other other popular myths in there. So the first age of man is, well, not the first age of man. The first age generally is the golden age, which is very very similar to the image of the Garden of Eden in the Bible. It's a paradise. So I'll begin the poem. At first, the immortals who dwell on Olympus created a golden race of mortal men. That was when Kronos was king of the sky. So, yeah, we all know, well, most people will know Kronos as the Titan who was father to Zeus, father to Poseidon and Hades also, and tried to eat them up because of the prophecy that his children would overthrow him. And the mother of the children, Gaia, ended up tricking Kronos into eating rocks. For he thought he was eating his children, but he was eating rocks. But it's also not just the fact that the gods overthrew the Titans. In the Greek vision, human beings are also meant to overthrow gods. So this is a very very radical idea. In that time period, the idea that human beings would at one point in the future overthrow gods, and that's why in a lot of Greek myth you hear about the dangers of hubris and pride. You could try to see what that vision does to a people collectively when they see themselves as sort of the evolution of the species, for lack of a better term, to overthrow the gods. The story of Icarus is one of the famous myths of hubris and pride, where the I can't remember if the father was Athenian but he tells his son, don't fly close to the sun unless the sun will melt the wax, or don't fly close to the sea unless or if you do this, the your feathers are going to touch the water and then they get wet and you can't fly anymore. And Icarus ends up flying too close to the sun and falls down to the sea and drowns and dies. So a lot of other myths are out there to also detailing the dangers of hubris and pride, because the Greeks were, very, very frankly, a proud people. And I don't know if it's not. The reason I like myths is that they deliver these messages without preaching. They're not saying that hubris or pride is a categorically bad thing, and they're not also saying that it's a categorically good thing. Hubris and pride can be good and it can be bad, and those myths show different aspects to emotions, or different. Those myths show different. They share different perspectives on the different aspects of the human condition. Men are meant to overthrow the gods. That was when Kronos was king of the sky, and they lived like gods, carefree in their hearts, shielded from pain and misery. Helpless old age did not exist, and with limbs of unsagging vigor, they enjoyed the delights of feasts out of evil's reach. So there was no evil, no pain, no misery, the vision of the Garden of Eden. A sleep like death subdued them, and every good thing was theirs. The barley giving earth asked for no toil to bring forth a rich and plentiful harvest. They knew no constraint and lived in peace and abundance as lords of their lands, rich in flocks and dear to the blessed gods. But the earth covered this race, and they became holy spirits that haunt it. Benign protectors of mortals that drive harm away and keep a watchful eye over lawsuits and wicked deeds, swathed in misty veils as they wander over the earth. They are givers of wealth by kingly prerogative. The gods of Olympus made a second race, a much worse one, this time of silver. So here we've entered the age of silver men. And so this is something that is going to be very, very interesting when we start releasing the episodes on Plato and the Republic. This idea of gold, silver, bronze, iron. Plato is going to use that in the Republic to show the different levels of the psyche in the human being. Just keep that in mind. Unlike the golden one in thought or looks, for 100 years they were nurtured by their prudent mothers as playful children, each a big baby in his house. So yeah, like this age of men also live longer too. But when they grew up and reached adolescence, they lived only for a short while, plagued by the pains of foolishness. They could not refrain from reckless violence against one another, and did not want to worship the gods, and on holy altars performed sacrifices for them, as custom different from place to place dictates. In time, Zeus, son of Cronos, was angered and buried them because they denied the blessed Olympians their due honors. The earth covered this race too. They dwell under the ground and are called blessed mortals. They are second, but still greatly honored. Zeus the father made a third race of mortals, this time of bronze, not at all like the silver one. Fashioned from ash trees, they were dreadful and mighty and bent on the harsh deeds of war and violence. They ate no bread, and their hearts were tough as steel. So I just wanted to stop here too and say that um, Hesiod doesn't give us a reason why this evolution takes place between the ages. In the Bible, we have a reason why there is pain and suffering. Well, no, well, I let me correct myself. Hesiod gives us a reason for strife. So before he starts telling this myth, he says that there are two kinds of strife. There is good strife and there is bad strife. And the bad strife is the one that causes war and famine and violence. And the good strife is the one that stimulates men to work. So it's the kind of strife that if we didn't have, we would just sit down on our beds, lie all day, and just become vegetables. So, and another reason for strife is the myth of Pandora, right? Where she opens the she opens the box, and you have all these bad things coming out of the box, and then the last thing to come out of the box is hope. So they ate no bread, and their hearts were tough as steel. No one could come near them, for their strength was great, and mighty arms grew from the shoulders of their sturdy bodies. Bronze were their weapons, bronze their homes, and bronze was what they worked. There was no black iron then. So this might also, to my mind, what comes to my mind when I read that part is the Bronze Age, right? Where most of these societies, most of these cultures, I might do a video. I might do a dedicated video on the Bronze Age if I feel the need to, if I feel it's necessary. A dedicated video on the Bronze Age later in the future, because yeah, it's also an interesting time where all these cultures are mainly fashioning their weapons and their currency and everything from bronze. I think most people would be surprised as to the complexity actually that these societies had. They had very, very complex ways of organizing the society. The idea that I had personally growing up, and I don't know if you, the listener, would relate to this, is people that lived in the Bronze Age and the Dark Ages, or whatever you want to call those those historic periods, where maybe primitive, maybe they weren't as socially adept at organizing their their people or their societies, but actually they had very, very complex ideas that most of what we take for granted today, originated from those societies. I digress. With their hands, they worked one another's destruction, and they reached the dank home of cold Hades, nameless. Black Death claimed them for all their fierceness, and they left the bright sunlight behind them. But when the earth covered this race too, Zeus, son of Cronos, made upon the nourishing land yet another race, the fourth one, better and more just. They were the divine race of heroes, who are called demigods. They preceded us on this boundless earth. So, this is where we have Achilles, Odysseus, Perseus, Ajax, all of them. Evil war and dreadful battle wiped them all out. Some fighting over the flocks of Oedipus at Seven Gate, Thebes, in the land of Cadmus. Others over the great gulf of the sea in ships that had sailed to Troy for the sake of lovely haired Helene. Their death threw his dark mantle over them. The events of the Iliad and Odysseus. No, not Iliad and Odysseus. Iliad and Odyssey. Apart from men, and gave them shelter and food. They lived there with hearts unburdened by cares, in the island of the blessed, near stormy Oceanus. These blissful heroes, for whom 3 times a year the barley-giving land brings forth full grain sweet as honey. I wish I were not counted among the fifth race of men, but rather had died before or be born after it. So Hesiod here is essentially saying the common phrase, I was born in the wrong generation. I wish I were not counted among the fifth race of men, but rather had died before or been born after it. You know, just goes to show that human nature never changes. This is the race of iron. In Hesiod's timeline, we all are the race of iron, you and me included, living today. Neither day nor night will give them rest as they waste away with toil and pain. Growing cares will be given them by the gods, and their lot will be a blend of good and bad. Zeus will destroy this race of mortals when children are born grey at the temples. Children will not resemble their fathers, and there will be no affection between guest and host, and no love between friends or brothers as in the past. Sons and daughters will be quick to offend their aging parents and rebuke them and speak to them with rudeness and cruelty, not knowing about divine retribution. They will not even repay their parents for their keep. These lawbreakers, and they will sack one another's city. This also is biblical in a sense. I can't remember the specific chapter, but there is a chapter where the disciples are asking Jesus, "Oh, what will be the signs of the end times? How will we know the end times are here?" And Jesus essentially says, "A man will, brother will fight against brother, sister will fight against sister. Brother will not love their sons will not love their fathers, and daughters will not love their mothers." Something like that. Ardent readers of the Bible listening to this, please put the verse in the comment section. Or that is essentially the 5 races. We have the golden race, silver race, bronze race, age of heroes, and then the iron race, which we're all part of. And then let me go on and read the concluding parts of the myth. The man who keeps his oath or is just and good will not be favored, but the evildoers and scoundrels will be honored, for might will make right, and shame will vanish. Base men will harm their betters with words that are crooked and then swear they are fair. And all toiling humanity will be blighted by envy, grim and strident envy that takes its joy in the ruin of others. Then shame and retribution will cover their fair bodies with white cloaks, and leaving men behind will go to Olympus from the broad path earth to be among the race of the immortals, while grief and pain will linger among men, whom harm will find defenseless. That is the concluding part of the myth. Yep. So, in the end, Hesiod doesn't really give us a path to redemption per se, unlike the Bible. The Bible says, all men are falling, but there is a way. There's a way back to God. Hesiod's version of events are much more pessimistic in a sense. You know, there's no solution to this. Just gives us the state of affairs as they are. But the conception of time in 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 this era essentially was cyclical. So instead of where you have time as like a forward moving arrow, you have time as a circle. So it could have been that it's a cycle. That might have been why there is no way of going back to the golden age. It might just be a cyclical thing where at the end the age of iron ends and a new age begins. So yeah, this myth is very interesting, and apart from this myth, the whole poem is admittedly less interesting than works like the Iliad and Odyssey, because the Iliad and Odyssey is about fighting, and how interesting really can you make a poem that is about work, you know. No one likes to read about work, but yeah, it's not just about, you know, working too. It's also like a mar- it's think of it like proverbs for the Greeks. It reads like the book of Proverbs in the Bible. So why is Hesiod writing this? Hesiod is writing this poem, Works and Days, because he has a brother called Perses, and his brother, he's trying to cheat him out of his fair share of the inheritance. The father was a farmer, died, left them with an area of land to share, and Perses is trying to encroach on Hesiod's piece of land by bribing the nobility and the aristocracy of the area to into giving them more than what he should have. And Hesiod is here saying, no, this what you're doing is wrong. This is how you're supposed to earn a living. It is through hard work. It is through toiling the land. Yep, that is why Hesiod is writing this. Depending on how I'm feeling, or you know what direction I want to go in, I might go into other myths that Hesiod writes about, or I might just go straight into Homer. Yep. So that's essentially the end of this discussion about the five ages of man and how each age just degrades. And in the Republic, Plato is going to, I think, this is just my pure head canon, but I think Plato uses this to show why the Republic needs to be a utopia that does not change, that stays static through time. Thank you so much for listening to this video, and hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for your time and attention. Bye bye.